So often in our lives as believers, we can just get ahead of the Lord, right? Like he gives us an idea of what's to come, and then we try to make it happen on our own so we can show everybody how amazing he is, which he is. But really, all we need to do is just keep up with him daily, let him give us the steps to be the one to bring what he said to pass. And I think if we're going to be honest with ourselves, most of our stories, they've probably got a mixture of both. Now, I personally have a lot of stories in my life where this is true, but there's one that happened recently that I believe the Lord wanted me to share to encourage those who are believing for big things. So, last year in 2021, I got a word from the Lord that it was time to start saving money for a house. Now, keep in mind, I'm a single dude. I've got no kids. I'm living in an apartment in Orange. It's super cheap, easy to maintain, and I really had no interest in buying a home. But when Jesus says you do, you just do. Also, at that same time, this is when things were just insane in the housing market, right? People are getting double-digit numbers of offers. Buyers are offering hundreds of thousands of dollars over asking price and just waiving all contingencies to essentially buy these homes with no inspections, no valuations, and in other words, it was just absolutely nuts. Almost immediately, though, I started to look at the climate and start doubting if what I heard was the Lord. Like, how can this even possibly happen? And if it were to happen, there's no way that I can stay in California, right? Even if by some miracle that could be true, there's no way it could be in Orange County. I'd have to leave all of my friends, my family, my job, my church, and just to be realistic. This word from the Lord also happened to line up with a trip that I was taking with some friends of mine out of state, whereas most of you would probably agree housing cost is significantly different than it is in California. So while we're out there, I took it upon myself to spend a couple days exploring homes in the area, and let me tell y'all, they were gorgeous. But while I was out there, I just never got the sense that I was supposed to leave California, even though I wanted to more than you could imagine. So I get back home from this trip and I start saving. Like, I didn't have the details, but I knew I'd heard that one from the Lord, and I had that instruction to follow. But even in my saving, I started realizing I got a big problem. I can do math. I was able to afford a monthly payment, but I didn't have a down payment, nor could I see any way to come up with one outside of God coming through. But if he said it, it's up to him to make it happen. So I prayed for God to make a way. Some weeks have gone by now at this point, and one day I was casually talking to a relative just about my trip out of state and how I was low-key looking at houses out there just because the craziness in the market out here is just nuts. And, I didn't say anything about a word from the Lord, just that I was starting to look into buying instead of renting. So that conversation ends, I just go about my day, and a few hours later, I got a call from this relative who just wanted to let me know that they were going to pull some money out of their house and give it to me so I can have a down payment to stay in California and stay local. Testimony over, right? Hold on, there's definitely more. So now we fast forward, it's August of 2021, and I was called onto the core ministry team for the Fullerton City pastors. During that time, the Lord spoke to me again about this house. He let me know that Fullerton was where I was going to buy this house. More specifically, it was West Fullerton, and that I wasn't supposed to start looking for this house until October. While we're having meetings with this team, the conversations also kept drifting to the next generation, young adults, and I kept getting this sense there was something there for me, but I still didn't have the details on it, so I just kind of filed that away in the folder. Now, over the rest of August and September, I started to get a real feel for house church ministry and the power that comes from it. I mean, having a big church service is definitely not bad, but there's this level of intimacy that just comes with smaller gatherings. And the house church that I was a part of, I was blessed to see healings, deliverances, baptisms. People were stepping up to teach the Word of God who I never thought that they would. To say this was an amazing experience wouldn't do it justice, and honestly, by the end of September, I just knew the Lord was calling me to be a house church leader. More specifically, it was for young adults, and that was what he wanted this new house to be used for in West Fullerton. So we enter into October. I start looking for a home at the previous prompting of the Lord, but instead of walking through the particulars with Jesus first, I made the decision on what kind of payment I was going to want and afford, and started looking at homes in a price range that fit that payment. However, before I started looking at those types of homes, there was this one house that caught my eye. It was much higher than the prices I was entertaining at the time, but it was my literal dream home. It had a huge open floor concept. It could hold a huge house church gathering and had a big yard for the dog to run around in and a master bedroom that was just to die for. But again, this was outside of my price range. I just clicked a little favorite button so I could, kind of gloat a little bit at it if I wanted to, and went back to looking at homes that were in my price range. During my first couple of weeks in looking at homes, though, I started to realize something. Homes in Fullerton, they're not cheap. And the ones in the range that I was looking at, they were going to need some work, $30, $40, $50,000 to get them ready for what the Lord had told me that I was going to use this house for. On top of all of that, as you would imagine, the competition for these homes in this price range was significantly higher due to those lower asking prices. So after spending weeks in unnecessary frustration, I finally decided to do what I should have done in the beginning, and I spent time with the Lord to ask him, Lord, what am I supposed to be looking for? I did some more specific math based on interest rates that had slightly dropped for the homes. I figured out what a loan for $30,000 would be for improvements and the payment with that. I then went through my budget. I found some things that I could lower or even cut out altogether. And with all that factored in, much to my surprise, I realized I can actually bump my price. This puts me in the turnkey home range that would require minor work at best. And then almost immediately, I remembered the dream home. So I quickly opened up my MLS listings. I went to the favorites. I found the house. And can you believe it? The house was under contract. I know, this was supposed to be the climax. Sorry, it was a hot market. Houses like that don't stay on the open market for 2 weeks. So I'm thinking, okay, well, good lesson, Lord. Should have worked with you first, Jesus. Message received. And I went back to looking again, but this time at that higher price range. Almost immediately after starting my new search, though, all of a sudden, I felt like the Lord just pulled me out of house church, called me out, and took me back to the Anaheim campus. I spent a lot of time in prayer, and I felt like it was the thing that I was supposed to do. So I reached out to my house church pastors. I let them know what I had gotten from the Lord, and while they were both sad, they said that as I was talking to them, they were getting a sense this was right, and that was that. The next week, I was going back to the campus in Anaheim. Now, candidly, everybody, I was kind of shaken up. This was completely unexpected. I never got any sense whatsoever that I was ever going to leave that house church. But again, when Jesus says move, you move. That first week back on campus, though, was absolutely amazing. You know, there's just those times where you know that you're smack dab in the middle of the will of God by being exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, with exactly who you're supposed to be doing it with. But even knowing that, I was still frustrated because I'm experiencing a lot of resistance in getting a home in Fullerton. Not only is the real estate market crazy just in general, but in Fullerton specifically, there's investors that are buying up properties left and right because we've got 2 colleges there. There's never a shortage of renters. Rent can go a little bit higher. And yet again, I decided I was going to go get myself a home. I mean, I'm not at a Fullerton house church anymore. Maybe I'm not supposed to be on the Fullerton team. Maybe my trajectory has changed. West Fullerton isn't the thing, right? So in my frustration with that resistance, I expanded my search to other cities in the area. But I still just kept losing out on offer after offer after offer. And then all of a sudden, the next Tuesday, after my first Sunday back, I was checking the listings. The dream home came back up on the market again. I immediately called my real estate agent. I said, listen, I want to get into this house. I believe this is my house. I want this house. I'm declaring that this is my house, right? Well, she calls me back a couple of hours later and let me know they had a backup offer, they accepted it, and it was coming back off the market again. Okay, Lord, not sure why I had to learn that lesson a second time, but message received. That same day, I found another home in Anaheim that was right around the corner from the church. And honestly, I was so burnt out at this point, I just put an offer in on that house so I could just be done with this nonsense. And I'm sure that you're going to be surprised to hear I found out the next day on Wednesday that offer also did not get accepted. Now, I'm about 6 offers deep at this point of not getting houses. And to say that I'm frustrated would probably be the biggest understatement of the year. Y'all, I'm not used to losing. See, it's not because I'm amazing. I just have a big God. I believe my big God for big God things, and big God things happen in my life on the regular. So in other words, this was very unusual for me. But in these types of situations, you've got one strategy and one strategy only, and that's to go to Jesus. So the next morning, it's Thursday, I begin to vent my frustrations to the Lord about just how hard it was to get a home, like somehow he's surprised. I was crying about how the market was a nightmare, how the area he told me I was going to buy in was super competitive, how I'm losing out offer after offer to investors that had more money. I reminded him of what he said and how much I didn't understand. And I got one single response. So, are you done trying to make it happen so I can make it happen? I repented right there. Okay. Yes, Lord. You said you'd do it. You'll do it. He then gave me a very specific word, and he said that I was going to meet someone at church, and it would be their house that he was going to give me. So a few days later, it's Sunday. I'm back on campus in service for the second week. I just kind of had this uneasy feeling, though. It was so different from the first week back on campus. And I'm telling you, that first week, I was 100% sure that I was supposed to be there. But this week, it was just off. So I started asking the Lord towards the end of this service, God, why does this feel so weird today? And then the Lord told me, okay, well, next week, you're going to go back to house church. What? I'm sorry, Lord, but I've got some questions. Like, first off, did I miss it? Like, this didn't feel like a rebuke, like, oh, you should have never left to begin with. And then also, what's the reason for taking me out in the first place? And if I didn't miss it, why only for 2 weeks? I mean, come on, Lord, as you're telling me to go back to house church, the pastor of my house church is explaining to everyone that I was called out, I'm not coming back, and I'm going to be at campus moving forward. So now I'm super confused, and as I'm walking out, I see a couple of really good friends of mine, and I started catching up with them, and the conversation went something like this. Hey, Justin, how's everything going? Oh, not too bad. I've been looking into buying a house and, been kind of hard to find something. But hey, listen, I'm believing the Lord's going to come through. He always does. Oh, wow. You know what? I didn't know that you were already looking. Man, I wish I would have, though. We actually put our house on the market. It's in escrow right now. And then his wife speaks up and she says, well, that's true. But we've already accepted one offer that didn't go through, and now these second buyers, they haven't put their money into escrow. And if they don't do it by 5 p.m. tomorrow, we can walk away with no issues. So now my spidey senses are officially tingling at this point, and I begin to ask some questions like, oh, so where do y'all live? Oh, we live in West Fullerton. Oh, really? So what's the address? Everyone, they gave me the address. I put it into my search. Y'all, it was the dream home. This was the home that was highlighted to me all the way back at the beginning of my search, the one that I tried to get into more than once. The second buyers ended up not putting their money in. They gave no explanation as to why. We opened up escrow and I moved in just before Christmas. And just because God never has a singular purpose behind his plans, y'all, this house used to serve as one of the largest rock groups for young adults at the Anaheim campus. And I'm excited to say that we're also going to be running a young adults-led house church out of this house every Friday night. And many of the new leaders that are going to lead this house church were many of the people who were attending that rock group years ago. See, the level of detail in this story is not something that I could have manufactured, and honestly, this kind of thing shouldn't even be surprising. This is exactly how it's supposed to be in his kingdom, and more importantly, in your life. So if you have a need, be encouraged because there is no lack, and God loves to meet real needs. Go to him, ask him where you're supposed to be, and just do the thing. Even if it sounds crazy, because he will do it. He's done it for me, he keeps doing it for me, and he'll do it for you. So I want to leave you with one final question that I want you to ponder on. What kind of stories do you want in your life? Do you want the ones where you followed a strategy, got it, and attributed it to Jesus? Or do you want the story where because of your relationship with him, he was the one who did more for you than you could have even asked? I'm so glad that I went with the Jesus one this time, because that's the story that has the power to change lives and bring hope, and I hope that it's done the same for you.